Unfortunately, choosing between the JBL Charge 4 and the JBL Pulse 4 isn't that simple. Even though at the end of the day they're both just speakers, there are some major differences between them. And depending on your needs and what you plan on doing with them, one is going to be better than the other. So today we're going to be comparing the JBL Charge 4 to the JBL Pulse 4 and see which one's right for you. Now, first off, obviously, there's the price. The Pulse 4 retails for $200, whereas the Charge 4 retails for $150, and it typically goes on sale very often. If you want to pick either of these speakers up, there'll be a link down below. And if you want to learn more about either of these speakers, please watch the full reviews because we're only going to be covering the main differences here. Now, the biggest and most obvious difference between these two speakers is their looks. The Charge 4 has a fairly standard fabric mesh body like a lot of other speakers out there that does a great job of standing up to constant abuse. You can take the speaker on the go with you and not have to worry about it. Whereas the Pulse 4 obviously has this light feature which simply looks amazing indoors or at night. But unfortunately, the Pulse 4's acrylic body just isn't as durable as the Charge 4. It's very easy to get your Pulse 4 scratched or dented, and there's always the chance you'll shatter the Pulse 4 if you drop it. So for that reason, I say the Pulse 4 is a great at-home or dorm room speaker. But the light feature on the Pulse 4 is also a drain on its battery. Even though the Pulse 4 has a 7,260 mAh battery, which is just a little smaller than the Charge 4's 7,500 mAh battery, the Pulse 4 only has an advertised battery life of 12 hours. But in my testing with the volume set at 80% and with the light feature brightness set to medium-high, I'm getting a real-world battery life of 8 hours if I'm lucky. Whereas the Charge 4 has an advertised battery life of 20 hours. But again, with the volume set at 80%, I'm getting a real-world battery life of around 11 hours. So this just reinforces what I'm saying about the Pulse 4, about it being a good at-home or dorm room speaker. Since its battery does drain out pretty quickly, this speaker is gonna live mostly on the charger. Now, both of these speakers charge via a USB-C port, which means if you're an Android user, you can charge your phone and speaker with the same cable. This just makes life a little easier. But it is important to keep in mind that you can't use this USB-C port on either of these speakers as a wired connection, and you can't use it to charge your own devices. But I also want to point out that only the Charge 4 has an audio jack while the Pulse 4 doesn't, and only the Charge 4 has a USB-A out port so that you can charge your own devices. Personally, I don't care that the Pulse 4 doesn't have an audio jack, but some people still need or want an audio jack for certain situations. So if that's the case, then you're better off with the Charge 4. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, these speakers are identical. They're both using Bluetooth 4.2, and they can both be connected to two devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJ. And they both only have SBC support. Unfortunately, they don't have any AAC or aptX support. But perhaps the most important difference between these two speakers is their speaker setups. The JBL Charge 4 is your standard forward-firing speaker that has a single 50 by 90 mm oval transducer firing at the front and dual pass radiators that shoot out the sides. The Charge 4 has a very similar speaker setup to the Flip 5, which, spoiler alert, I'm going to be using in today's sound test. Whereas the Pulse 4 is a 360-degree speaker, technically. It has a single upward-firing 57mm diameter transducer on the top and a passive radiator on the bottom. At the end of the day, all three of these speakers have the same sound signatures, which is to be expected, but they all do still perform a little differently.
You just walk right out the door. Don't wanna do this anymore. Now I'm lost without you. You drive me crazy out my mind. How'd you do this every time? Now I'm lost without you. Used to be the one I talk to when I'm sad. Can't you see now tainted love is all we have? Our issues run so deep, now when I try to sleep I feel so bad. I should leave
JBL's latest crop of speakers all sound pretty good. They all have pronounced mids and vocals and a good amount of bass to them. Distortion isn't a problem and they all have good clarity. But the biggest performance difference between all of these speakers hands down is their bass and max volume. Even though the Flip 5 and Pulse 4 are both 20-watt speakers, I can't help but feel the Pulse 4 has more bass than the Flip 5. But that could be due to the Pulse 4's downward firing radiator, which is using the table to its advantage. But the Charge 4 still noticeably has more bass than the Pulse 4. And since the Charge 4 is a 30-watt speaker, it also manages to get noticeably louder than the Pulse 4 as well. And even though the Flip 5 is a 20-watt speaker just like the Pulse 4, it just doesn't manage to get as loud. So if sound is your highest priority here, then it goes Charge 4, Pulse 4, and then Flip 5. But keep in mind, if you want to get the best sound out of the Pulse 4, then you're better off using it indoors, where its upward firing speaker can bounce music off the ceiling. Even though the Pulse 4 sounds okay when used outdoors, it's not going to sound as good as the Charge 4 where you can have the music shooting directly at you. But finally, let's talk about speaker pairing protocols, because this can be a big deal for you whether you already have JBL speakers or if you plan on getting more JBL speakers in the future. The Charge 4 uses JBL Connect Plus, and JBL Connect Plus is currently found on the Charge 4, Charge 3, Pulse 3, Flip 4, Extreme 2, and JBL Boombox. Whereas the Pulse 4 is using Party Boost, so you can currently only pair it to another Pulse 4 or to a Flip 5. But as JBL announces new speakers, they'll also use Party Boost. Unfortunately, you can't pair the Pulse 4 or a Flip 5 for that matter to any JBL speakers that use JBL Connect Plus and vice versa. So if you were to get a Charge 4 today, you won't be able to pair it with newer JBL speakers or future JBL speakers that get announced. Although, yeah, it does suck that Party Boost isn't compatible with JBL Connect Plus, Party Boost does have some important improvements to it. Party Boost has a stronger Bluetooth connection between two speakers, which means you get double the range as JBL Connect Plus, but more importantly, it also means you get less stuttering between your speakers when you have multiple walls in between them. So overall, the Charge 4 is best suited for someone looking for a rugged speaker that they can also take on the go with them that also has a long battery life. The Charge 4 also has more bass and gets louder than the Pulse 4, and it also has a USB-A output and audio jack if you need it. The Charge 4 is just a great candidate for your next camping trip, whereas the Pulse 4 is a great at-home or dorm room speaker. Its light feature really does look awesome and is great to use with friends, but the light feature does have its drawbacks. It does take a toll on its battery life, so the speaker is going to live mostly on its charger, and you do have to be mindful of its acrylic body. And in order to get the best sound out of the Pulse 4, you're better off using it indoors. One isn't inherently better than the other, it all just boils down to your needs. But if I had to pick one, I'm going with the Pulse 4. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.